Hi everybody, welcome back to part 7 of our Corvette build. This is the Revell 144 scale kit. Now just a bit of a heads up for those of you that are watching this as a premiere on Friday night. It might be that I'm not going to be able to join you for that because I am travelling, I'm going away for a week and I'm not certain that I'll have an internet connection at 8 o'clock on Friday night, but rather than mess around with the timings, I've decided to go ahead and publish as a premiere anyway, because I know that quite a few of you do like to join and chat amongst each other, not just to me, on Friday night. So I'm leaving the routine as everybody's got used to, and I will join you if at all possible if I can get an internet connection whilst I'm on the move. So in terms of this particular episode, I got all the superstructures built and in primer last week. And this time I want to go back and do a bit more work on the bridge structure. I did that probably 3 episodes ago now. So I'll try and get this painted and glazed, the Wheelhouse windows glazed. And also do a bit more detailing on the actual bridge deck itself with some of the equipment, the shields and railings and so on that fit onto that particular structure. So I'm short of time this week, so we better get straight over and look at what we need to do for this particular next part of the build. Okay, so I'm going to start again with this base structure. This is the wheelhouse in here. And I'm just reminding myself how it all goes together. So there are some deck parts that go around the perimeter of the wheelhouse here. So I just want to check fit those. They actually come in 3 separate sections in the Pontos wooden deck set, which is a little bit odd. So I'll carefully cut these parts out. So I'll just check fit these. Obviously we'll leave the backing on for the time being. I don't want to take the backing off yet. Okay, so I think what I'm going to have to do is to paint the lower part of the deck, this section here, this platform, then apply the wooden deck and then fit the wheelhouse bulkheads over the top. I won't get these side pieces in after fitting the bulkheads. We also have these little gates to fit at the front edge here, and it's a bit of a puzzle really that Pontos haven't provided those in brass. They're very thick. They're getting on for 1 millimetre thick, which would put them at something like 3 inches, I think. And it's an oddity because Pontos often give us some really useless parts that are just far too fiddly to use, and then they don't provide something like that which is ideal to be done in etched brass. So I'm not going to be using the Revell parts. I'll just use them as a template to cut some brass sheet or a piece of plastic sheet to a more scale thickness, and I think they'll look better when they're fitted. So it's a Pontos puzzle, let's put it that way. So I think what I'm going to do next is to get these 2 parts painted, and then I'll be able to glaze the bulkhead for the wheelhouse and fit this open door, which needs some glazing behind it, and then I can do the deck and fit the wheelhouse bulkheads in place. At that stage I might decide to put it onto the model, I'm not certain. The first thing to do I suppose is to get the thing painted and glazed. So the first thing I'm going to do is give this another coat of primer. This is the black Mr. Surfacer 1500 that I'll be using. I'm priming everything in black because when I did the hull, if you look back at that painting process, I undercoated everything in black as a bit of pre-shading, and I want to get a consistent finish of the paintwork across the ship. So I'm going to be giving everything a second coat of primer in this black, just so that everything matches up really. Just before I paint this assembly, this is the wheelhouse, I've replaced the horrible Revell thick doors or gates with some thin plastic card, and I've just robbed some hinges from I think it was fret 5 or fret 6 of the hood. It's a spare funnel fret that I had for that build. So there's some hatches on that fret that I've just cut the hinges off from there, and they've just been placed onto the gates just to add that little bit more detail to these parts. So they're alright. It just goes to show, don't throw away any of your spare frets. There'll be something on there that will come in handy for future projects. So they're much better than the Revell parts, probably nearer scale thickness. So the next thing I can do is to paint these assemblies. So I'm going to be using some Tamiya lacquer insignia white. It's the same white that I've used for the hull, so it should all match up when this is done. And I'll just use a nice patchy coat of white on this. I don't want it too stark. So let's see how that goes. So the way I do these is just to fill in the centre of panels. So in this case, the bulkhead sides here of this assembly. So just gently fill in the centres, get plenty of white on there. Something like that. So it just adds a bit of shading to the model. But it's obviously too heavy like that, so I'll just go back, draw the airbrush back a little bit and open the nozzle up just to give a bit more paint flow and a bit of a broader coverage. And that leads to just a little bit of shading and variation in the paint finish. Sometimes with painting you'll get little bits of hair or dirt or dust, little specks in the paint, and I just use one of these sponges. This is a really old thing, it really needs replacing, and I just gently, lightly go over the surface of the paint, and that just removes any of those little specks and marks and gives us a perfectly smooth finish. This Tamiya lacquer paint responds really well to this sort of treatment. It gives a really nice finish on the part. And the other thing that it does, it adds a little bit of wear. It takes the edges off sometimes and just adds a bit of weathering into the process as well. Okay, so the next step is to glaze the wheelhouse cabin. And for that, I like to use this crinkly acetate. It's like a cellophane really. And a brand new roll of Tamiya masking tape fits the bill. Obviously you don't want old cellophane, it's going to be scratched. But this is a brand new packet, so it'll do the job for us. So this material is really clear. It's exactly what we need for the windows. So I'll cut some strips out. And I'll attach the acetate with some MIG Ultra Glue. This is an acrylic water-based glue, so it's not going to do any damage to the transparencies. It won't fog it like CA has the potential to do. We don't want a lot, just enough to tack the acetate down. And just gently lay the acetate in place. And just smooth it down a little bit. Just put a tiny little bit more on the top. We don't want it falling out. Obviously, once the assembly's together, it'll be difficult to replace if it did come loose. So this is just a bit of extra security really. But there we are. You'll notice that I've left the interior in black. That's not strictly accurate. It would probably have been white, the internal bulkheads. But for the purposes of the model, it just gives an impression of darkness inside. So they look nice. So a free piece of acetate from an old piece of Tamiya tape does a really good job of glazing the windows. The last piece needs to go onto the door. This is the open door that I left off when I built the wheelhouse. So obviously this glazing needs to be fitted before the door can go onto the bulkhead. And then that can go straight on. And I'll position it slightly open, just halfway across. And the MIG Ultra will just make sure that we don't get any problems with fogging, as I said. So I think that can all go together now. The next thing to do is to fit the wooden deck parts. They go around the perimeter of the platform. And they need to go in before we can fit the actual cabin bulkheads. So we'll get those fitted first of all. Just remove the backing protective strip. And if the hood decks were anything to go by, these Pontos wooden decks are very, very sticky. So I really want to get them into position first time. Trying to remove these would probably result in damaging them, I think. They grip nearly straight away. If you can hear some flopping around, don't worry, it's just that a bird's flown through the door. I've left it open and they've flown into the shed just when I took this piece of wood off its backing sheet. So it caught me at a really inconvenient moment. I'm going to have to get rid of it in a minute. We don't want any accidents, because the ship is actually out on the bench, so we don't want any deposits, if you see what I mean. So we'll just do a bit of a recovery mission. There he is, safely extracted. It was only a small, it was a sparrow or a robin, I think. But it's gone now. But one day when, actually it was my wife who came into the barn, or the shed, to find a tawny owl sitting up on the rafters, which was a bit of a surprise. It got in through an open window overnight, and it took us all by surprise. Nothing like that today. So there we are. That's the walkway around the platform. Then the cabin bulkhead can fit inside like that. So that's all good. I'll be able to glue the cabin bulkheads into position now, and to do that I'll have to reinforce the join with some styrene. This brass is very, very thin around the bulkhead, and it'd be very difficult to get a fixing without some sort of extra support. So this is some millimetre square styrene strip, and it just enables us to cut these glue blocks. And again, I'll use some of this MIG Ultra Glue. This will take a bit longer to dry, but again it avoids any risk of fogging the windows that we've just fitted. So just position the glue blocks down at the bottom, attached to both the bulkhead and the floor. So I think that should work. So I'm going to leave this until this MIG Ultra Glue is completely dry before I do any more. It needs to fit on the underside of the bridge platform, but I don't want it to move around at all. The fit's got a bit of play in it, so if I try and do it all together, it's likely to move and it'll come out of position. So I'm going to leave that alone now. So whilst this is drying, I'm going to fit the deck to the bridge platform. Now originally I thought that I was just going to paint the bridge platform in a dark colour, because the photographs that I've got show that this area is very dark. But I've also got some photographs of a different ship, admittedly, with a wooden deck that's been painted. And you can tell that the deck's been painted because the area around the traffic areas has worn away to show the wooden deck underneath. So I'm wondering if the photographs that I've got of the Snowbury are simply showing a darkened wood, either stained or painted. So I'm not absolutely certain how to finish this deck, whether or not the deck was removed or just painted. I'm not certain at all. So I'm going to have to give that a bit of thought. In the meantime, I will go ahead and fit the wooden deck, because if I don't have it in this sort of clean condition, I'll be doing some sort of weathering on it probably. The difficulty with this class of ship is that there were so many variations and refits and alteration during the lives that it's very difficult to pin an individual ship down. So you've got to really, in some cases, make your best judgment about what's going on with a particular ship and a particular photograph. So I'm taking a bit of a chance really putting this on. It'll certainly look nicer with the wooden deck, but for accuracy I might just have to darken it a bit. I'll give it some thought. I don't need to decide just yet anyway. It's a shame actually to do anything with these wooden decks. They're very nice. So I might end up using some artistic license and just leaving them as they are. So I'll leave those both to set, and then I'll come back, assemble the two together, and then we can think about adding a few more details to this assembly. I've just gone around this gangway to match the cutout to the Pontos deck, so it's just smartened the edge up a little bit. Alright, so that's nice and dry, quite solid. So I'll fix that now to the platform. So for this, I think I'm going to have to use some super glue and just hope that it doesn't fog the transparencies that I've just fitted. It shouldn't do, it's quite a long way away and I'm not going to be using a lot of it, so hopefully we'll be alright. Okay, so I'll be using some thin super glue here, just dropped into the location holes. And I'm going to do them one side at a time because the fit is a little bit tight. So hopefully that will hold together. We'll have to see. Okay, so I'll let the super glue set up there for a bit. And then again we can come back and do a little bit more. One thing that I'm going to have to sort out here is this gangway here, because you can just see inside there's a little gap there where the bulkhead is a bit too far aft, a bit too far this way. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about that because it's, as it's designed, we've got the bulkhead at the bottom lying flush with the deck pieces. And I've made the cutout here on the bridge deck exactly where Pontos tell us to do. But it's about 0.5 millimetre too far forward and it's leaving that little gap. The other difficulty is that the space here is very tight for this ladder. So this ladder slides down and rests on this little deck at the back. But because we've got this bulkhead a little bit too far aft, it doesn't really want to go in without a struggle. So I'm going to have to do something to sort that out. So the first thing I'm going to do is just push this bulkhead forward a little bit so that it's as far forward as it'll go. And then I'll fill that little gap in there, and then hopefully we might just be able to squeeze that ladder in. So to fill that gap, I'll use a tiny little bit of Milliput Superfine White, and that'll allow us to apply it and wipe it off so we get a nice clean finish on it. But it is a strange thing that that part doesn't fit. I'm sure that I haven't done anything wrong with it. I've done exactly what Pontos instruct. It just doesn't fit very well. I can just smooth that off with just a little bit of water. So we don't have to do any sanding of this, which is just as well as we've already painted it. Okay, so that's filled. I'll just have to do a little bit of touch up where I've scratched the bulkhead. But what I'll do is actually fit this ladder and then it's done and out of the way. So I'll just go over and get that painted and we can get it put onto the platform. Okay, so we'll see if we can get this in without doing too much damage. Okay, so I think that's gone into position all right. So while it's in that correct position, I'm just going to put the smallest drop of super glue there just to hold it. Don't know whether I can get in without spoiling it. I don't want to get super glue on the deck because it will stain it. So I think that will probably do. Thing is that Pontos parts usually fit really well, but I've been trying to see how I could have made a mistake and I just don't think I have. I think it's just a measurement that's out in the Pontos set. So the next thing to do is to sort out the railings and shields that go around the side of this deck, and then we might be able to think about fitting it to the ship. The first shields that I'm going to build are these that go around the front of the bridge deck, and I'm going to do those because it'll enable me to fit this forward structure here, because the shields actually join onto the side and there's a strip that goes all the way around the front of the bridge. I think all the rest are railings that go around the aft side. Okay, so these are the parts for a couple of the shields, and with this one we have to join these two parts together to form a 90-degree angle, and they've also got a flange on the top which faces down and out, so something like that. So the trick here is to get those angles to match when we join the two together. I'll come back to these frames later on, but first of all I want to get the actual shield together. So you can see when they're joined, the top flanges will meet up like that. Okay, so I've done a bit of experimenting with these shields, and these ones where we've got the framework to fold over, I've found that they just really get in the way of soldering and getting a nice corner on this part here. So what I've done is removed those frames and I'll glue those on separately, so I can just concentrate on getting the actual shield together with a nice 90-degree angle here. So I'll put plenty of flux on. I can always clean this up now because I've got rid of those fiddly little frames off the bottom. So I think that's a better option. I can clean that up now. So doing it like that enables us just to get that nice clean sharp corner at 90 degrees with the flange folded over at the top as well. Fortunately, we've only got 2 of those to do. So just on the other one, just take off the frames. They just snap off quite easily. So just save those, put them to one side, be fitting them back on in a bit. So we have our 2 shields here. Now, because I removed the frames from the inside, I'm going to have to reinstate all those now. So this is a bit more work to do it like this, but at least in my case I can get a decent result with it. So I'll refit all these frames now. So I'm just using a little bit of thin super glue for this. And as I go along, I'll fit the braces as well. Now, once all the parts are in position, I use this super thin super glue just to basically flood into the assembly. And that makes sure that all these parts are properly sealed in. So that's what the assembly should look like when it's all done. So I think building it like that in sections, at least for me, was much easier. It enables you to get the join on the outside exactly to 90 degrees and a nice tight joint with the flange at the top. And I think that's the most important thing, really. That's the join that you will see the most. And you can still add the detail of the frames and the braces on the inside later. So these parts here, as they were in the original state, you can see how much more difficult it would be to fit these parts, solder them while still retaining the frames. So again, a bit of overcomplication there from Pontos, I think. I actually forgot that these shields have this flange along the top, or rail along the top. So I'll fit those now, but that is a test of whether or not you've got the shield at 90 degrees when you've assembled it. So I'll just put a spot of glue in the corner and at either end, and then just drop the shield down onto the rail. Just let the glue do its job like that, and then actually what I've done as well is to just put some more of the extra thin in. Like that. So got a pair of shields. I'll get a photograph of those actually, then you'll be able to see how the assembly goes together in a bit more detail. So the next ones that I'm going to do are these. Now hopefully they're going to be a bit simpler. So this is again 90 degrees, but it's got a little return on it like that. So that sort of angle anyway. And I just want to get these to match up, really. I want the bends to be, want the return to be about the same on both sides. And then these have got a wind baffle on the front edge. So that's these parts. You just have to fold the ends up, and these attach to the forward face of the shield. So this wind baffle has a centre bracket which needs to be glued in position first. And then that goes on to the front of the shield. Okay, they're not a brilliant fit, I have to say. There's quite a gap at one side, on the starboard side, so that's going to need filling. It's going to need a little strip on the edge of the deck, and then these shields fit around the sides, and again they're standing off a little bit, not as much, but we've got a little bit of work to do there before those fit properly. Okay, so I think that's as much as I can do in this particular session. I thought I might get these fitted, but because of the poor fit, I'm going to need to do some work with those, and I'm not going to get them finished in this video. So we'll just get this bridge section back on the ship just to see what it looks like. I'll try and position these shields for some photographs at the end of the video, but I'm a bit disappointed with that. We've had a couple of fit issues with this Pontos set, which is quite unusual, I have to say, but we're going to have to do some work with this. Okay, so I think that's all I'm going to be able to do this week. I've ground to a halt really with these shields, and they're going to need quite a bit more work to get sorted out, and it's not something I'm going to be able to do this week. So I'm going to leave it at that at the moment. I'm not going to rush it because this is quite a prominent area of the model, and I think if I've just rushed ahead and just tried to fix it for the sake of finishing it this week for this week's video, I think I've got every chance of making a mess of it. So I'll err on the side of caution and leave it at that for the time being. So I think I've worked out what the problem is with these shields. There's a very thin piece of Pontos brass which goes all the way around the front of the bridge, and I think that'll allow us to position the shields a little bit better once that's in place. So that's it for part 7. We've got quite a bit done. The bridge is all painted and it's ready to fit now. We've sorted out the problem with the ladder on the aft gangway, but sorting the shields out is just a step too far. So that'll be coming up in part 8, which unfortunately won't be as a premiere on Friday night. It'll be a bit delayed, probably until Monday or maybe Tuesday the following week. But just before I sign off for this week, I just wanted to show you this lovely piece of bird's eye maple, which has been kindly sent over to me all the way from Canada by Robert. So Robert, I really appreciate that's a very generous thing to do, to send me that lovely piece of wood, and I can assure you that I'll make good use of it when we come to make the baseboard for the Flower Class Corvette. So that's it for this one, everybody. I hope to see you for the next video, which, as I said, will be a bit delayed, but look out on your notifications for that one coming up either on Monday or Tuesday the week after next. So in the meantime, everybody, look after yourselves, enjoy your modelling, and I'll see you next time for the next part of the Flower Class build. Bye for now.